Curses. I gotta be frank with you guys. I don't believe in curses, but I do realize that there's always a skeptical character in a movie. I don't believe in curses, and they're the first one that stumbles into an ancient temple and is picked off by the curse. They're the first victims of the curse, and that, unfortunately, I think would be me. My name is Teresa, and this is cursed jewelry. So the topic of cursed jewelry is very bizarrely near and dear to my heart. I don't own any cursed jewelry, not that I know of. I am a writer, a romantic comedy writer. Well, the very first novel that I attempted to write, every writer's got their first novel. My first novel was not a romantic comedy. It was a gothic horror novel about a cursed ruby. It took me 7 years to write. Usually now it takes me about a year to write a novel. If I'm working under the gun 24/7, it could take me about 6 months. But this first novel was like a curse onto itself. It was a curse on my productivity. It was a curse on my mental health. It was like the first writer's struggle. This cursed ruby gothic horror novel. There was some romance in it, but it was the twisted, toxic kind of romance. There is this plot device called the McGuffin. And the McGuffin was coined, or at least is most associated with director Alfred Hitchcock. So in the 60s, Alfred Hitchcock did this long, intensive, comprehensive interview with fellow French director Francois Truffaut. I don't know if I'm messing up his name. This interview was in a long transcript compiled into a book, and I read that book. I'm just putting it out there that just how pretentious I used to be. He mentioned the McGuffin, and what the McGuffin is, some goal, some desired object, usually a plot device, motivates the characters in the story. And sometimes the protagonist becomes the antagonist, becomes the anti-hero, because they become so obsessed with this object of desire. They're willing to do anything. They're willing to sacrifice anything, be lie, cheat, steal, or kill to obtain this object. The McGuffin is the one ring to rule them all. The ring drove Gollum to the deepest point of obsession. And it twisted his mind, it twisted his body. He would do anything for it, anything to obtain it. He's crawling around, my precious. Through hundreds of years of movies and books, we have Glowing Briefcase, Pulp Fiction, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everybody's out to get the Lost Ark of the Covenant. The Falcon statue and the Maltese Falcon as Humphrey Bogart, or what's his name? Phil Marlowe? Sam Spade? I think it's Phil Marlowe. He called it the stuff that dreams are made of. Another influence for my Cursed Ruby book, the 1970s movie by Werner Herzog, Aguirre, Wrath of God. It's a German movie about Spanish conquistadors, don't ask any questions, who venture into the heart of the Amazonian forest. The main character, Aguirre, he is so obsessed with finding the lost city of El Dorado, the city of gold. He plunges his expedition deep into the heart of the Amazonian forest. Everybody on his crew is like, we gotta turn back, this is madness, but then he just takes people out left and right. Picks them off. Nobody is going to stop him to get to his goal. Everybody in the expedition is gone. Everybody, either by his hand, by disease, by his Machiavellian machinations. He is the only one left on this life raft. He is deep into madness. He's like Gollum here. My precious. He's lost his mind. There's monkeys on his raft, and he thinks he's like the king of the monkeys. He is basically a man who is about to die in the jungle, lost to his own greed and obsession. The lost city of gold, which in this case is the movie's McGuffin. So as you can tell, I am very passionate about the art of the McGuffin, a plot device that in itself has no value, but it is what the characters in the movie ascribe the value to. It is a catalyst, and it is the vehicle driving all the bad things in humanity: vice, greed, murder. My main character also becomes obsessed with this evil, nefarious, cursed ruby. If she's heard that it's cursed, anybody who dares seek it and anybody who dares possess it will befall to many misfortunes, but she is determined to find it because she is in a place that is desperate. She's got nothing going on for her. She's kind of a loser. Finding this priceless jewel will be her lottery ticket. This is her one last chance of redemption. And a lot of the times, a lot of the treasure hunters trying to find this treasure is a fool's errand, but they are in a desperate place and they want this one last crack at life, you know, a rags to riches story. In her ill-fated quest to find this lost jewel, she becomes the worst version of herself. She basically becomes Gollum. The ruby becomes her precious. She is at a point where she's willing to do anything. She's willing to go through 7 levels of hell in order to find this one shining jewel of redemption. Does she find it? Does it give her everything that she's ever dreamed? Is this jewel truly the stuff that dreams are made of? You know how these stories go. Nothing ever ends well for anybody. And after putting myself in that kind of headspace, I've decided to write rom-coms. So that being said, real life throughout history, there have been very famous, notorious jewels that have been said to be cursed. There's a whole legend behind the finding of the jewel and what befell of those who possessed these jewels. It's very juicy. It's a tale as old as time, The Quest. It's an examination of the dark history of colonialism, imperialism, and human greed, and we will uncover if there's legs to these cursed stories. Without further ado, I present to you the Hope Diamond. Hope you guys forgive me if I have my notes because it's a lot. The Hope Diamond, I'm sure you've all heard the name. It's an infamous 45.52 carat diamond. Did I get that right? Yes. It's a big diamond, and it has a tragic tale that spans monarchies. Many who possessed it have either died unexpectedly, suffered fates like stabbing, beheadings, murder. So the history of the Hope Diamond began in an Indian mine, where it was first discovered in the 17th century. That's the 1600s. It soon found its way to the crown of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and it landed in the hands of Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. We know what happened to Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. They lost their heads in the French Revolution. Hope Diamond traveled through a long line of merchants and elites, and it landed in the hands of the socialites. Evelyn did not originally believe in the superstition, didn't believe in curses just like yours truly, until the unexpected death of her son and her daughter, followed by her husband's admission to a mental hospital, convinced her of the diamond's curse. So she sold the jewel, and eventually it made its way to its current resting place, where it's on display at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I actually went to the Smithsonian. I went to that exhibit, but it was so crowded. It was like 5 rows of people deep. Even though I was like maybe 5 feet near it, I couldn't see it because there's so many people, so I just kind of gave up. I didn't want to be crushed by people. The Hope Diamond story sounds like a juicy story, but it is not as juicy as the tale of the Delphi Purple Sapphire. The story of the Delphi Purple Sapphire follows a classic pattern. I have this theory that this pattern, how the jewel was begot, the ill-begotten means of begetting these jewels, that makes absolutely no sense. How somebody first took the jewel is the root, the seed of all these curses associated with its history. The Delphi Purple Sapphire, it's not even a sapphire at all, it's an amethyst, stolen by a British soldier from the Temple of Indra. The stolen loot made its way into the hands of Colonel W. Ferris, who took it back to England. From that point on, the gemstone has been nothing but a source of trouble for his family, a source of misfortune, a curse. Eventually, it made its way to his son, a scientist and writer, Edward Heron Allen. He described his experience of owning this jewel and how it has haunted him. He set the stone in a silver snake ring that is said to have belonged to a 17th century English occultist philosopher, Hayden the astrologer. He surrounded it with all these good jujus, and cursing didn't work. He and his wife were haunted in their home by a Hindu figure wandering the library, demanding that they return the stone back. He tried to get rid of the gemstone by gifting it to a friend, kind of like passing off a chain letter. The bad luck continues. After his first friend returned it, he threw it into the Regent's Canal, but it made its way back to him after a dredger found it, and then he gifted gifted it to another friend. You know, this guy, Heron Allen, he doesn't sound like a good friend. If I knew I had a cursed stone, I wouldn't give it to my friend. I don't know what I would do with it. I'd probably call for an exorcist. Have you guys ever been to an exorcism? Because I think that I have. So after he threw the stone into the canal and the dredger brought it back and gave it back to him, I don't know how the dredger knew this stone belonged to him. I would assume in the 1800s, the dredger wasn't doing so hot financially. And if you found like a purple sapphire, you would just keep it yourself because that would be your riches. But somehow everybody in town, everybody in London knew that this belonged to this Edward Heron Allen guy and gave it back to him. Then he gave it to a friend, an opera singer. The story goes that she never sang again. And then the stone was once again returned to him. He couldn't shake the stone, he couldn't get rid of it, and he lost a lot of friends. And that's easy to see because they see that he has a cursed stone. Everybody knows he has a cursed stone and he keeps trying to foist it on his friends. So obviously that ended the friendship. And when his daughter was born, he packed the stone up in 7 boxes and put it in a safe deposit box and sealed it with the warning letter inside. And he asked that the Delphi Purple Sapphire not see the light of day for 33 years after his death. That's a very specific number. I don't know why 33 years after his death was meaningful, but then his daughter didn't wait that long and she gifted the stone to the Natural History Museum in London just a year after his death, where it remains to this day. Heron Allen has some parting words of advice in his letter. The stone is accursed and stained with blood and the dishonor of everyone who has ever owned it. Whoever shall open this box shall first read this warning. Cast it into the sea. The next wicked jewel that we're going to talk about is the Black Orlov, also known as the Eye of Brahma diamond. It was stolen from an ancient statue of the Hindu god Brahma, invoked an unshakable curse on anyone who carries the diamond. J.W. Paris, a diamond dealer who brought the diamond to the US, he jumped to his death from New York's tallest building. The Black Orlov diamond made its way into the possession of 2 Russian princesses. Both of these princesses leapt to their death. The Regent Diamond follows the same path. It was stolen from an Indian mine by a slave in the late 1600s, was smuggled in a ship to Europe, and upon hearing the valuable gemstone, the ship's captain murdered the slave, stole the diamond, sold it to an Indian merchant, and eventually it made its way to decorate the sword hilt of Napoleon. Many of the monarchs who possessed it, including Louis XVI, apparently he possessed many cursed diamonds and then lost his head. Chances are, if you're wealthy, you would possess many famous jewels, many famous gemstones. His name has been linked way too often with these cursed diamonds. First the Hope Diamond, now the Regent Diamond, and now we move on to the Koh-i-Noor Diamond. The folklore surrounding the Koh-i-Noor Diamond follows the same pattern, stems back to 18th century India, where the uncut diamond decorated the emperor's golden throne. The stone has been rumored to be worth more than the Taj Mahal, which was under construction at the time. The English took the stone during the colonization of India. So then the story goes, there's cholera outbreaks, fearsome storms at sea, unfortunate accidents. The gemstone has been linked to all these misfortunes ever since its journey back from India to England. I don't know, I have to be proven. I have to see the curse happening in front of me, especially the story of the Delhi Purple Sapphire. If I time traveled back to the 1890s and I was with this Edward Heron Allen guy and I saw him pitch that thing into the canal, wash his hands of this cursed jewel, and then suddenly some dredger of the canal brings back the cursed sapphire and then he tries to give it away again. I have to see it happening. I have to witness it happening for me to believe it. The Black Prince's Ruby. The number one rule about a cursed jewel is that somebody has to come up with a catchy, high concept name for these cursed jewels. This ruby is said to be stained with blood. They are all stained stained with blood. In fact, the ruby I made up in my first novel, it was also stained with blood. I've imbued my fictional ruby with a variety of evil superpowers, so to speak. Okay, so bear in mind, I have not revisited this book for about 10 years. It was my first book, so I'm not gonna show you the cover because I don't really want you to find it. The two main characters are looking through a lot of historical Victorian photos of people who possessed the ruby over time. Arabella's curse cannot be cut, not with a laser or even with a diamond razor. No man can alter its original form. At the height of the Byzantine Empire, Arabella's curse was used as an execution tool. It was strapped to a staff and employed as a makeshift axe. Legend has it Arabella's curse is 10 shades darker than your average ruby because so many men and women have bled on it over the centuries. It's said to have no core. So then the two main characters are looking at this medieval illumination, which I did a lot of fashion research for, okay? It's called The Trial and Burning of the Witch Eliza Darrow, Northumberland, England, 1553. Eliza Darrow's fate didn't end at the stake. She spent 2 days and nights in a mass grave, and on the third night, the ruby brought her back from the dead. She came back all right, but she came back angry. I'm beginning to see a theme with all these stories of curses, and they all come from a place of greed, murder, massacres, betrayal, colonization, and the subjugation of India by the British Empire during the time of British imperialism. So all these stories, all these curses, I believe are a manifestation of guilt. When you think about haunting, a ghost haunting a certain place, person has died in that river, or that person died in that house. It was a murder farmhouse in the Midwest somewhere in the 50s. Knowing that something nefarious, something icky, something bloody has happened in a certain place imbues that place with legends. I think as human beings, we can visualize such things happening. The haunted house, the murder house, somebody was murdered there. All of a sudden, it triggers your imagination. You start thinking of all these stories. So all these jewels, they've survived centuries. They were all acquired by ill-begotten means. The curse itself is a manifestation of centuries worth of bloodshed, betrayal, imperialism, of guilt. It's a manifestation of guilt. Basically, this object has seen some stuff. We know it's like a nexus of human greed and all the bad things that human beings can do to each other throughout history for the crown, for yourself, for your own personal gains. So that, I think, is why some jewels are cursed. And obviously, the bigger the jewel, the bigger the story, the more miles it has on it, the bigger the curse. I've got an ace up my sleeve, or rather, a ruby, priceless, magical, a wicked jewel that can raise the dead. There's only one problem. I don't have it. Yet. It's hidden in an old mansion by the sea. You know the kind. There's one in every small town. A house with an overgrown lawn and a grave or two. Locals whisper about the ruby's bloody history. Tales of murder, madness, and curses. That's just a load of crap. Made up to scare off treasure hunters and tomb raiders. Good thing I'm neither one of those. I'm just a girl trying to make ends meet. Every story needs a hero. Every hero sheds a little blood. To be honest, and I'm not like just stroking my own ego here, this sounds kind of awesome. So I wonder, since this is a dark book, kind of shows you where my headspace was 10 years ago, what if I wrote this as a romantic comedy using the same characters? Like, just imagine if the characters were a troupe of actors, like the actors in American Horror Story. They play different characters, so we still have the same Ruby quest plot, but told in a completely different tone of voice. Instead of dark and demented and obsessed, we have lighthearted and slapsticky. You're insane. My precious. You mistake for insanity what is in fact destiny. I'm going to find Arabella's curse, and God help you if you try to stop me. Get out of my way.